We're discussing handling UIKit gestures. We'll start off with some of the gestures. If we do not complete all the gestures today, we'll come back to them after the assessment to go and see what they look like. But feel free to experiment here because there is startup code there from Apple. So let's go ahead and create a new project. So File, New, Project, single view app, and the product name. We'll call this UIKit gestures. So UIKit gestures. Next. Create. And we have our project. Okay. We have our project. As we said, we'll create it programmatically as far as like the setup UI goes. So we'll delete our storyboard. We'll delete our storyboard. We will go to our info plist. We'll remove our main storyboard entry from the info plist. We'll go to application scene manifest, scene configuration, application session, and we'll remove the storyboard name here. At this point, we'll run our app again and verify we have no storyboard. Right? This is a good place to start for our group project coming up. We know how to set up our scene delegate to get to our root controller. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go to our scene delegate. Yulia, question? In our scene delegate, we will set up our window object. Our window object gets its frame from the device screen. So screen.main.bounce. The entire device becomes the window. And here we'll say window.window scene. We'll associate this scene delegate with the window. Next, we need to give it some sort of root controller, but before that, we'll say window, make key. So make this window the key window and show it on screen. And we need to set our, let me put a to do here. To do set the root view controller. The biggest benefit of setting up your app like that, especially when you're working with a team, is now you could go ahead and create individual storyboards and assign those storyboards to different members on the team. And each member will have their own storyboard, their own view controller to work on. So we'll actually be using a tab controller there, which is fine, because we know how to get things in code. So we'll go to our view controller. We'll delete this view controller. View controller, delete, move to trash. And as we did last week, we'll create a new file. CocoaTouch class is going to be a tab controller subclass. So right where it says subclass here, we'll say UI tab bar controller. What are we calling this? Gestures tab controller. Okay, so we have our gestures tab controller. We click next, and we say create. Perfect. So here we have our gestures tab controller. It's a subclass of UI tab controller. Very similar to what we've been doing for the weather app, right? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and set up a tab gesture controller. We say new file. We say Cocoa Touch class. We say next. And this time it's not a UI tab controller subclass anymore. It's UI view controller. And the first gesture we'll discuss is tap gesture. This one is very popular. Tap gesture controller. Tap gesture controller, subclass UI view controller. Next. Create. So we have our tap gesture controller. Let's go ahead and create a storyboard file for it. So new file. What do I click on for storyboard file? Storyboard, right? So I go to user interface, I click on storyboard, I say next, I give it a name, I'll say tap gesture. I'll say tap gesture and I'll say create. Right. I will create one more tab for now. As I said, we'll come back to this project. File, Cocoa Touch class, new class, and this one is going to be called swipe gesture controller. So swipe gesture controller is subclass of UI view controller. Click next and click create. Okay. And lastly, we'll create a storyboard for it. So right click on it, new file, storyboard, and swipe gesture, create. Great. Okay. Let's give our tap gesture controller a color in our viewed load. Viewed load of your tap gesture. Viewed load of your tap gesture, give it a background color of your choosing. Give it a background color of your choosing here. I'm in the tap gesture controller. I give it a background color. And I'll go to my swipe gesture controller. I'm going to my swipe gesture controller. I'm also giving it a background color of, say, yellow. Did I give it yellow too? Orange. We did that Friday again. I love yellow so much. Okay. Great. So here we have our two tabs for now. We'll go set it up in our tab controller subclass. In our tab controller subclass, gesture tab controller. No, we haven't done that. There's a to-do in there. We haven't done that yet. So here in our view controller, for now, let's just say view controllers equal to, what's my first one? I'll call my first one tap controller, and I'll call my second one swipe. Yes, we'll come back. We'll get the instances from the storyboard. But first, let's just see if our code actually works correctly. And lastly, we need to go to the scene delegate to instantiate our root controller as this gestures tab controller. So this would be a very good place to start when you're working on your group project, right? You work on your group project, how many team members you have there, how many tabs you have, how many view controllers you have, right? You set up everything in code. It's easier to work with, less conflicts, merge conflicts, and easier merge conflicts to work with too, right? Okay, so let's go to the scene delegate. And in our to-do here, let's give the window its root controller. So window.root view controller equal to gesture tab controller. if our tab controller was coming from Storyboard, we would have to get the instance from the Storyboard, right, everybody? But this is a brand new instance. It's coming from code. We say, go ahead, instantiate with an empty initializer. Okay? Cool? Let's run the app and see where we are. So we have our yellow screen coming up. If I click to my right, I should see orange as well. We do not have a tab bar item yet. Right? That's going to come. But for now, we have orange and yellow. Correct, everybody? Yes? Do we have our two tabs showing? Okay, now let's go to our first storyboard, our tap gesture storyboard. Empty canvas. Beautiful. Now we could go ahead to our object library and select a view controller. You what? This one is Tab Gesture Storyboard. Tab Gesture Storyboard, we added one view controller in. Right now we have a warning because this guy doesn't have an ID, so we need to go set that up. So my storyboard or my scene, I'll click on it. I'll go to the class identifier or the identity inspector. I'm in the identity inspector. What am I adding in here? Tab gesture, very good. And what am I doing here? I'm going to copy the class name and paste it in the storyboard ID and press enter. Very good, Yulia. Thank you very much. Okay. What? Yes. Look at the error. See what the error says. The error gives information about what's happening. It could be a storyboard ID or something. All right, cool. So what do we want here? We want an image view. We want the image view here. So let's go ahead and add an image view. So image view. Our image view will have a heart. When we tap on the heart, it will change the state of the heart.
Oh, we have to drag in.
Image view. Oh, your canvas is empty. You need to drag in a view controller. Yeah. So same as we've done before, we'll just set that view up such that it's half of the width, center, and the height is the same as the width. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say center. Center my image view horizontally and vertically. Go ahead and get my width to be equal width. We edit that again in our storyboard here. So equal width will be exactly 0.5 or 50% of the width of the device. And my height, I want my height to be the same as my width, so I control drag and select aspect ratio. The last one I did was the width was equal width of the width of the device. I edited the width from 0.5, whatever it is, to I edited the width proportionally here. You go to width, you edit, and then 0.5. Cool? And next we need to edit the aspect ratio as well. So the aspect ratio, what do we want it to be? 1:1, right? So 1:1 ratio. You could have different ratios based on what you want. If I say 1:2, this is what I get, right, everybody? Cool. So now we have our image view. Let's give it our lonely heart will be empty. Go to Attribute Inspector, select Image, Heart. So we have a heart, and our heart, the tint color will be System Red. Our tint color will be System Red. Yeah. All right, what else we need to do? Let's set that up. Go back to our tab controller subclass and let us set up our tab controller. Not here, not here. So private lazy var, we'll call it tab gesture VC. Tab gesture VC is of type tab gesture controller. And we need some sort of controller. So here, if I'm getting an instance, so here we need to get an instance from Storyboard. Okay? So I'm getting an instance from Storyboard. I'll say guard let view controller equal to, oh, I need a storyboard, right? So we need a storyboard. We need the storyboard instance. So here we'll just call it storyboard. And to get a storyboard instance, we'll say UI storyboard. And we'll give it a string name. And we'll give it a bundle of nil. What is the string name I'm passing here? The one that I gave it. What is it called?
Tab gesture control.
Ah, there lies one bug. So if you say tab gesture, you said tab gesture controller, right? Is that the storyboard name?
Isn't that what you gave?
That's not the storyboard name, right? Let's take a look at what the storyboard file is called. Here, we see tab gesture.storyboard. Everybody sees this file? Right? This is the name we're looking for. Right? Not .storyboard, whatever, but we're looking for that string name. The string name is called tab gesture, correct? This is what we put in. If we put in controller, it's going to crash, saying cannot find storyboard with name tab gesture controller. So this needs to be tab gesture here. And now we have a storyboard. We could say storyboard dot instantiate with identifier. So storyboard dot instantiate with identifier. And my identifier, what's my identifier here now? Tab gesture controller, right? So this here is a view controller. This here is the storyboard. Everybody? And we want to typecast, correct? To tab gesture controller. And we'll crash if we have an error here. Could not downcast to this. And lastly, we'll return view controller. Not controllers, view controller. And we'll simply say, instead of tab gesture controller here, with a new instance, we'll say tab gesture VC. Okay, cool. How are we doing with our initializer here? We good? The what? Oh. How are we going? We typed out our property initializer? Cassandra, you said no? Oh, okay. Majid, how are we doing? You typed it out? Sering? Good. Okay, make sure we updated our first view controller to just say tab gesture VC and not tab gesture controller open parens, close parens.
Alex,
Yeah.
did we, in the launch storyboard, did we change anything in that?
In the launch storyboard.
Yeah,
The launch screen storyboard?
Yeah.
No, we did not touch that. Last Friday we did like an image view on it, right? But
Yes.
today we haven't done anything with that. Okay, Cool. So now let's run the app and see what we have. If you get any crashes, that means your storyboard name is not the same, or your view control ID is not the same. But if everything went well, you should see a heart. Do we see a heart? Do we see a heart? We can do it. We have 5 minutes to add a tap gesture. A simple tap gesture, you click on it and it changes our heart image. Okay? It also gives us an opportunity to see the big difference between a button being able to be clicked on and a UI image not being able to click on by default. Because you'll try to add a tap gesture to your image view and you'll be like, oh my God, it's not working. Why is it not working? There's one property that you need to change. What's that property? Is user interaction enabled? Give that guy your lunch. Thank you, sir, Mr. Eric. So is user interaction is enabled is false by default on a UI image view, and what other element? What other element is not clickable by default? Yeah. Like I can't give it an action by default. UI label. A UI label interaction is also enabled false. Okay? So pop quiz tomorrow. Those are the two things. Okay, so we have our image view showing up. Great, great, great. Let's go write some code and we'll wrap it up. So let's go to our tap gesture controller. Do we have to? Oh, this guy doesn't have a. Xcode gotta have a way to make this easier. Like when you add something, just add the thing automatically. Let's go to our assistant editor and get our image view. We need an outlet to it. Outlet to our image view.
Can you go back to
Can I go back to what?
the storyboard or review the storyboard? I don't know why I'm getting it.
Which one? This one?
Yeah, it's saying that I couldn't understand.
Make sure your names are the same. So make sure your ID is set here. So open up your attributes inspector, not your attributes inspector, your ID, your class identifier, inspector, and make sure that exactly. Cool? All right. Perfecto. Tab gesture. Okay, so what do we want? We just want access to, this image view. That's it. So control drag over and call this heart image view. We just want to make sure we have access to the heart image view in our view controller, because we need access to it in order to change its image. And we'll now go ahead and configure a tap gesture. So first we need to configure a tap gesture. Then we need to come in here, configure tap gesture. Next we need to add the gesture to the image view. So you could add a gesture to any view, right? Image view, label, name it, right? You could add a gesture to it. And then we need some sort of function to get activated, a selector. So we need a selector method that gets called when the gesture is triggered. Cool? For any gesture you're setting up, this is basically the setup, right? Create some sort of gesture recognizer, right? Add it to the view that you want the gesture to be added to, and then have some sort of function that gets called based on that trigger. So let's go through that. We'll create a lazy var here. We'll call it tap gesture is of UI tap gesture recognizer. Okay, we'll say gesture equal to UI tap gesture, return gesture. Julia, question? Our gesture, before we actually write the add target, we'll add some selector here. It needs to be at Objective-C, right? Because it's going to be selector syntax. Objective-C runtime. So here we say private func, and we'll say tap, did tap. Anytime you're writing some sort of function that works with a tap gesture, always try to capture the gesture itself, because it will come in handy, it could come in handy, right? Where you want to get the actual gesture that was triggered. Without doing that, you don't have access to it. So here we'll say gesture is of type UI, tap gesture, recognizer. Great. So when this gets tapped, we want to do some change. And here on line 19, we'll add the gesture. We'll say gesture, not add the gesture, but rather set the target. So gesture dot add target. Think of this like control drag from a button. So target action, right? The target is ourself. We're the ones that have the function, and the action will be that actual function that you call. So target is ourself, and the action is the selector, which is called dtap. So this is step one. Step one is pretty much done. Know that there's other properties on a gesture. A gesture, for example, has number of taps required, right? Number of taps required, the number of taps for the gesture to be recognized. What's the default number? 1, right? So the default number is 1 here. Default is 1, but you could increase that number. When we say 1, it triggers the action, right, everybody? But you could increase that number for whatever reason you want to, right? Maybe you have some game that you just created with UIKit, and when you get to like 10 taps, the thing dies, maybe, right? So next we have gesture dot number of touches required. Here, the number of touches required says, it should really just say what the thing is. It's number of fingers required, right? What's the default number of fingers you require for a tap gesture? 1, but you could have for some reason 2 or 3, right? Or all 10. Dun, dun, dun. Cool, so that's the default. Again, the default is 1 here. All right, great. So just know those are the things we have, like we could change on the gesture. So now let's add it. If you don't add it to your view, that view will not work. The gesture will not work, right? So number 2 is very important. Number 2, what are we adding that gesture to? What are we tapping on? The image view. What's it called? Heart. Okay, so heart image view that add. Every view has an add gesture. Every view has an add gesture recognizer function on it. So to any view, as I said before, you could add a gesture to it. Here, what are we adding? The thing we just created. It's called tap gesture. Scroll up for a second. 1 second. Done. All right. I'll stop and just change it once here, because some of us we need grub, right? So when I tap it, I just change it for 1 element here, but we have a to do. So to do is to complete this. Complete. I'll complete it and I'll post it. But for now, we'll just simply say, when I tap it once, just change your image to UI image system name heart.fill. Okay? Again, we have more code to write there because you want to keep tapping it and changing them, right? You want to toggle them, everybody? Right? But we'll stop here. Yes, I could go on, but you guys will jump on me. So here to do complete, and let's go test. Let's test it. So let's see if our function gets called on 36. I tap on it. Ooh, it's not getting called. Any ideas here? We said something at the beginning of lecture. We said there's two elements that doesn't have this property set to true. Right? So there you go. So Mr. Benvenido says we need to say heart image dot is user interaction enabled to true. Let's run it again. And this time, if I click on it, my function gets triggered. Keep running here, and my image changed. Okay, everybody? Right? So big, important, remember, with an image view, you need to say, is user interaction enabled, set to true. Okay? And yes, we have some code there, but that code will take 10 minutes to write. Right? Basically, we want to toggle it. We want to toggle it so that when I click it again, what changes? It goes back to unfilled. Everybody? That's a good to-do there for us to do. Cool? Great. But we'll come back to that project and add more gestures, especially like next week when we finish assessments. We'll come back to it and we'll add the rest of the 6 gestures. Everybody? Yeah? Cool. All right. Any questions?
How come we have to do that in code? We couldn't do
In what? What's that? Oh, this we could do it. We could definitely do that. Let me. Good question. So Tiffany was asking why we do this in code. We could do it in Storyboard. So if you go to Storyboard, if you go to the tab gesture, everybody go to Storyboard, click on the image view, and go to Attribute Inspector. Do we see user interaction enabled? And it's not checked. You see that? So you could do it in Storyboard, right? But when I'm dealing with, if I start in code, I want to just do everything in code. Cool? But know that you could change it in Storyboard. Everybody with me? Okay, very good. Any other questions about gestures here? And again, we have 6 gestures. What are the gestures? Let's just write them out. Where am I? We started here, right? Who's going to tell me the gestures?
tap, swipe.
How many of us are in the class here? We have UI, tab gesture, recognizer. What else we have? What else we have? We have long press. We have rotation. We have swipe. We have pinch.
Are they all UI?
Yes. What else we have? Pan. Cool? So pan you drag is basically drag. Pinch, your 2 fingers, you pinch in and out. Swipe, you swipe left, right. You could swipe in directions. You could swipe left, right, up, down. Rotation in radians. You could rotate clockwise, counterclockwise. Long press, we've done that. Pinch, pan. Cool? Great? Perfect. All right, so we'll stop here and we'll come back to this app and build out other gestures. After lunch is lab time. We need to finish labs here. Or I could just talk the whole day, which is fine too. Okay, so know that our tab gesture, any gesture you're setting up, step 1, configure the gesture. Step 2, add it to the view. You forget to add it to the view, it won't work. I almost want to say step 3 for UI image. But step 3, if you're doing it with UI image, make sure you say is user interaction enabled because you'll spend like, what's happening there? And then, of course, we need the selector. Cool? Great. Okay, so we'll stop here.